Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
How you doing? Oh, look, it's Donald Trump. You're showing me a picture of Donald Trump. Uh-oh, scissors, you're cutting through Donald Trump's face. Mickey, you sure you want to do this?
Yes, I do.
You may never be welcome back in your tribe. I think you've just cut the ties.
Donald Trump has screwed the pooch, Bob.
Oh, yeah, I saw that tweet of yours. I'm unconvinced. What did he do? And how come nobody was paying attention to that other than you on Twitter, so far as I can tell?
People should be paying more attention to it. After, the Georgia election was a test of whether the guy had enough self-control to sublimate his, personal vendetta in order to advance what he supposedly believes in, which is all the issues.
Can I just interrupt you for a second? Wasn't that about the 1000th test over the previous 4 years? Like, was there any doubt remaining?
Well, but he'd accomplished some things, and it was a key moment when the control of the Senate obviously hung in the balance. Mm-hmm. If the one Republican had won of the two that were running in the runoff, mm-hmm. we wouldn't have this whole infrastructure, a social infrastructure, Build Back Better bill. The Republicans would be in charge of the Senate. We would still probably have an infrastructure bill. We wouldn't have any prospect probably of an immigration amnesty. A whole lot of things that Trump supposedly believes in would be much better for the nation. Okay.
In your view.
In Trump's view too, supposedly.
Right.
I mean,
that right.
And against that was his grievance about the election being stolen. And all he had to do was sublimate it for like a week or two, and he couldn't do it. Okay. That was bad enough. That really cut it for me. I really had it with him then. Okay.
Yeah.
But this week, he put out a statement by Donald J. Trump, 45th president of the United States. If we don't solve the presidential election fraud of 2020, which we have thoroughly and conclusively documented, Republicans will not be voting in 22 or 24. It is the single most important thing for Republicans to do. So he's doing the same thing he did in Georgia, which is give Republicans permission not to vote, which is why the Democrats won, except now he's taking it national. And he's threatening to fuck up the midterms, which the Republicans had basically, they were hanging in the drapes already. They thought they have it won. And this, he is saying, I'm going to fuck it up for you by discouraging Republicans for voting. And that's just like unbelievable.
So the dynamic, first of all, dynamic's a little different than in Georgia. In Georgia, the idea was he convinced them that that their vote in effect wouldn't count because things were so dishonestly calculated, right? Wasn't that the idea?
But he's invoking the same principle. They're not going to vote.
No, he's saying I'm organizing a boycott this time. That's different.
Well, I think it's both. He's also saying they're not going to vote because they don't trust the system. And I've gotten tons of emails saying, he's right. I'm not going to vote. It's all rigged. So really? Obviously that's what people, I mean,
tons
responses to Twitter.
Mickey, do you know how much one email weighs? Do you know how much? Do you know how many emails it would take to have tons?
I got 20 or 30 tweets, which for me is a lot, saying he's right. The whole system is rigged. I'm not voting. So obviously, people who follow him have taken that message, and it's worse than that, Bob. Well, my principle, and you could say this is the way I rationalize my early support for Trump, is that after he lost, he went insane because he couldn't take it.
You voted for the good Trump, and then he went crazy, and then you voted for him again. So you're really not to blame.
He started to go insane with COVID. Mm-hmm. I admit that was long before he lost, but he so perhaps he was insane all along, but he kept it in check, and he really lost it after the election. He clearly did things after the election that were crazier than he'd done before, and it's clear to me now the Republicans are totally fucked because obviously we're hoping that somebody takes him on, and that's why I think it's important to start opposition to him now because. It's going to take a while to erode his support. But even suppose Ron DeSantis has the balls to get in the race, and suppose Ron DeSantis beats him, okay? He's not going to turn around and endorse DeSantis for the
No, of course
presidency.
Not. He will doom his candidacy.
He will.
Which he will have the power to do.
He will take it out on him by sabotaging his candidacy, by claiming it's fraud or refusing to endorse him or running as a third party or calling for a boycott. So the Republicans are totally fucked as long as Trump is politically active.
If it's what you say, I love it. Yeah.
And I assume it's dawned on them that this happened. This is the case. And I don't quite know what they can do about it.
I'm not convinced that if he actually gets the nomination, they're doomed. Surely you don't think that. You think this one thing is ending his chances of winning the?
Oh, no. I'm not saying he might not win fair and square, but I'm saying he's insane and we don't want him to win fair and square. We want another nominee. And he's in before 2024. There's a good chance he will screw up the midterms. And I think this is insane. And you said on Twitter that it's rational. How is it rational?
Well, first, let me say the other thing I said. The other thing I said was on Twitter was he will quit saying this within a week and people will have forgotten about it in a month. And I'm sticking with that. And I haven't heard many people. You say that your crowd is somewhat attentive to it. I haven't seen much about it.
No,
I think it's going to fade.
Incredible lack of attention to it. I agree.
Okay, that's what I predicted.
They've forgotten about it already, but
that's what I said.
The media has forgotten about it, but I'm not sure his base voters have forgotten about it.
Well, if he quits saying it, they will. Most of them are as old as us. They're not going to remember something for more than a year.
He's going to stop being obsessed about the 2020 election because he's got it out of his system. No, he's going to keep talking about it.
Well, we'll see. It could be that he'll actually get a kind of negative feedback that dissuades him. It could be that he'll just move on to something else.
I think he's gotten some negative feedback already, obviously, but I think it'll dissuade him for a month or two, and then he'll be back on the case. He
also hasn't gotten what he hopes to get with these things, which is lavish media attention. So he hasn't gotten the kind of positive feedback he likes.
That's a good point.
So,
so he hasn't gotten the catnip, the little pellet of media attention that he expects.
Right. And maybe that's kind of what I meant when I said it's rational. He wants attention above all, but I don't think I did. I think I was thinking, it rouses the base and they continue to love him and it gets him the nomination or something. Maybe I meant that, but I'm not sure I'm willing to stand by that.
It's inexplicable. Well, Eric Erickson had a theory, which I'll get to, but it's inexplicable that the media hasn't paid attention to it, since it would hurt Trump if they did pay attention to it, and they hate Trump. So why didn't they pay attention to it?
For starters, the MSM, the kind of resistance media, spent 4 years doing things that were stupid from their perspective, right? I mean, they just consistently did things that galvanized his base. So
now they're in the we don't pay attention to Trump mode when they should.
Well, I just mean expecting expecting the resistance media to do things that are actually bad for Trump would be a bizarre expectation at this point. What they did was things that maximized clicks and viewers.
Maybe they're all on family leave, like our Secretary of Transportation, and in the middle of a supply chain crisis.
Yeah,
you realize he's been on family leave for 2 months.
No, but let me quickly amend what I just said.
On the job.
Just quickly, I do wonder why the media didn't cover it now that I remind myself that they're interested in clicks and viewers. You'd think this could get that for them.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead.
Eric Erickson's theory as to why it was rational is Trump can't have the Republicans win the midterms because that proves that you can win an election despite the rigged system. So it's in his interest to sabotage the Republicans. Erickson's always been anti-Trump, but it's at least a theory.
That's a pretty arcane. I don't know. So who's been on family leave or something? What'd you say?
Pete Buttigieg, our Secretary of Transportation.
Oh, he is our Secretary of Transportation.
And you wouldn't know it. He's back home with Chaston or whatever his name is. And I
think it's Chaston.
And their 2 babies, and he's enjoying parental leave while the country sinks into a supply chain crisis.
Yeah, that supply chain thing, man. I've been reading up on that. It's trouble. As you know, I'm thinking about buying a new car, and it's going to add several $1,000s to the price.
We'll talk about that.
We can get to that.
I also think this decreases the art. This is This is not my attempt to get you mad, although
that's
I
coming.
will do that.
Yeah.
But this is so idiotic of Trump that I think it sort of decreases the idea that he's a fascist who's about to take over America. Unless the argument is that why would he want his voters not to vote? Unless the argument is they stop voting, they go home, they stockpile their arms, and they're ready to start a civil war when the Democrat wins the 2024 election.
I just think you're misreading Trump's governing algorithm. Look, he wakes up every day and says, how can I get attention today?
Right.
That's it.
Right.
That's it.
That is not what a fascist would do. That is not what a competent
that's
fascist
true.
would do.
But also when you start saying, well, maybe he thinks this will happen. Maybe he thinks if you're talking more than 36 hours from now, no, he's not.
You're the one who said he was rational, Bob. So it wasn't me.
Well, I see. Yeah, his goal being to get attention every day. He's been pretty good at that. And now getting kicked off Twitter was probably hurt, but
it definitely hurt. And making all the Republicans, which is his party, hate him, arguably hurts him because he's not going to be president if he might destroy the Republicans, but he's not going to be president if the Republicans nominate somebody else.
We agree on that. We agree on that. But we also agree that the person they nominate will not win.
Right.
Because Trump will sabotage them. All to the good.
Pete Buttigieg will win, and then he'll spend the entire presidency on family leave, and the country will run on autopilot. It'll be great.
I just had, this is a little related. I just had a lunch with a political scientist at Princeton and was reminded in talking to him that I basically never meet anyone who likes Kamala Harris. There are so many different demographics I've tested at this point. No one likes her.
Didn't like her either?
No, nobody does.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my two left-wing daughters says, I think representative of her generation and cohort, she's woke, just says, she's a cop. So, I mean, by the way, she doesn't even have, parts of the left that you might otherwise expect on the basis of her kind of demographic profile.
She's the Megyn Kelly of Democratic politics, except Megyn Kelly's made a comeback. And there was a period when everybody in America hated Megyn Kelly. Remember that? And then she sort of lost her perch, and now she's back. So maybe
where is she? Where is she back? Is she a totally online presence?
I think so. And she tried to start an online show and it flopped. But I mean, nobody hates her anymore. How can you hate somebody who's just an online presence? And
right, it's like us. Who hates us?
Right, exactly. Well, one of my most persistent critics and my smartest critics, who I've come to respect, is this person Emma Wright.
Yeah, you've asked me in the past if I'm related to her. I have a niece named Emma, but her last name's not right. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. Well, anyway.
But wait, no, go ahead. You're going to say, or were you just going to ask me if I'm related to her?
Yes.
The answer is no.
Okay.
Well, wait, tell us about her. Why do you bring her up? I mean,
she would be the only person. You were talking about people who hate us.
Oh, she hates us?
She doesn't hate us, but she trolls us.
Well, few people hate both of us. Most people hate one of us.
Most people hate me. Very few people hate you.
Oh, that's so untrue.
That's because of your skillful PR, never really saying anything that's going to piss people off.
Oh, give me a gosh darn break, Mickey. By the way, so we can talk about this in the Parrot Room, which reminds me that anyone who bails out, if you're watching this on video, do not just bail out. If you're going to bail out, go to the very end and look at the cool little trailer, 5-second trailer thing that I think will be added to the end of this if all goes according to plan. This is some killer shit.
All right.
And we have Nikita, the great Nikita Petrov to thank.
Is it animated?
I wouldn't put it like that.
Okay.
I should plug his newsletter while we're talking about him. It's called Psychopolitica. It's if you're interested in artsy, avant-garde, psychedelic stuff.
By the way, do you have the mics geared correctly? Because last time they were off, and you intimidating me with your big Tubin mic while you suck up to Ezra Klein is not the look I'm going for. Okay. Just saying that.
Okay. Some people were saying what you need. There was this volume discrepancy, which was started with
your giant tubing mic.
I don't think that was it. But people did suggest that you need a more phallic mic. Could
you show them the giant tubing mic just so they know what we're talking about?
Well, first I have to do both a trigger warning and encourage everyone 18 or under to leave the room.
This is definitely NSFW.
You ready for this?
Jesus. Man, if Dave Chappelle tried that, he'd be off the air.
He would be off the air. Did you watch the Dave Chappelle, the controversial?
I'm ready to talk about it. I'll talk about it later, but
why not now if you're so ready? Oh yeah, we should. You mean we should stick with politics because that's our brand?
Yeah, for a while.
I just can't tell you how delighted I am that we have gone this far without talking about hard or soft infrastructure. Now, sadly, we will come to that because you put out an issue of your newsletter, Kausfiles.
It's next on the list, Bob.
On that very subject. And let's face it, talking about an issue of your newsletter is such a rare and precious opportunity that we can't let it go by.
I'm churning out every month and a half, Bob. I can't keep up this pace.
Yeah. No, I was kidding. You're amazingly prolific.
It's wearing me down. You can tell.
You're amazingly prolific for a man of your productivity level.
Here's what's happening. Seems to be the progressives are making a big show of how they're going to stand tough. And again, I thought the whole point of the previous, events in the House where they let the progressives win was to satiate the progressives' needs to posture and preen, so then they can get down to business. But they're posturing and preening again and saying, we're not going to give up any of our programs. But they have to cut the cost down, so they got to give up something. But they put out this statement saying, we want to keep all our programs. So they've decided they've chosen not to choose. They don't want to make this painful choice among the 10 programs they like. It's not, since all I care about is, I don't care if they pass a guarantee to community college. That's fine. It's a bunch of money. It might not work.
It's a good thing. I like it.
Child care program. That's fine. It's bureaucratic. It'll be unionized. People prefer informal child care, but it's just wasting money. But the child tax credit, which is welfare for mainly single moms, the problematic part is welfare for mainly single moms who don't work, will dramatically change the texture of life in America, and it's not a good thing. So,
okay.
So it's not clear to me that the progressives really care about that. It's not on their list of priorities.
Okay.
So who does care about it?
Can I just frame what you're about to say? So this is you're about to do the argument in your newsletter, right?
No, I wasn't going to get to that. I have a few more points to make for it.
Okay. Well, when you get there, I want to frame that for you. I'm here to help.
So it's not clear that it's on anybody's priority list, that maybe because they assume it's going to pass and it's already baked into the cake, or maybe because they're about to throw it overboard. I don't know. It doesn't poll well. They took a second poll and it failed again by like a 52 to 35 margin, exactly the same margin as 2 months ago. So it's just not popular. So if you're a David Shor type and you say they should advance what's popular, this fails that test.
He's the father of popularism, we should say.
Popularism, correct.
Recently written about by Ezra Klein in a much discussed post.
Who is a god among men.
You notice that too. That's so weird. I was just thinking that the other day.
That's sort of his Homeric epithet.
Yeah, and well-deserved, I might add.
Who changed my life. How much traffic did he tell you for you to turn into a Ezra Klein Mooney?
How much traffic? After he interviewed me, I picked up a couple thousand unpaid newsletter subscribers and a couple hundred paid. It was a good day's work.
That's pretty good. I'd call him a god among men if he did.
He is a god among men, as I think I just said. Did I not say? Yeah, he's a god among men.
Anyway, on the left, Matt Bruenig pointed out that the statistics are that this isn't going to cut poverty in half. All the boasts about how the tax credit is going to cut poverty in half are bullshit, because the people who don't file taxes aren't signing up. It's only reaching 14% of the target audience. So it ain't going to cut poverty in half. The people who don't file taxes are, of course, the poorest, because they don't work and they don't have income and they don't get taxed. So a lot of them don't work. So it's not going to achieve its alleged money liberal aim of reducing money poverty. And And I also think it's vulnerable for the reason that you're about to sabotage.
Am I?
You could run a really nasty negative ad against any swing Democrat who votes for this thing, saying he voted to recreate welfare. We thought we'd recreated welfare, and now he's sending money to people who don't work. And I think that's very damaging. Romney tried it with Obama, and it didn't work only because Obama mobilized all hands on deck to counter it because it was so potentially potent. So I do think swing Democrats will not want to vote for this. It's not Shorism. They're not voting for something that's not popular. They're not voting for something that will cause them to lose their seats because somebody could run a fairly or unfairly run a negative attack out on them.
So now we have moved to your newsletter.
This is what my newsletter was about.
Right. So
by the way, it wasn't my idea. I stole it from a friend.
Yeah. No, there's a long and honorable genre that consists of people taking what they want to happen for ideological reasons and arguing that it's also the politically smart thing to do. And
that's my specialty.
It is your specialty. And I saw early on, like that you were doing it in your newsletter, and you were saying, let's see, which of these three things, which of these would you dump from the bill on grounds of sheer political calculation? And I thought, I think I know what the answer is going to be, but I read on anyway.
Well, it's the one that polls badly too.
Yeah. So you're saying,
I'm right, Bob.
You're saying that of the main constituents of this, of the things that they need to dump, the candidates for dumping, this is the one that the Republicans could do the nastiest attack at about, harness that anti-welfare mother sentiment, basically.
Correct.
Now, would the visuals for this have black mother smoking crack while her toddler puts tweezers in an electrical outlet or something? Have you thought about
that? That was
this?
The cover of the New Republic when the welfare bill was being considered, and I don't think the tweezers were there, and I don't think it was crack. I think she was just smoking. She was smoking a cigarette.
It's a famous. They got accused of playing the race card. I was assuming you would one up them and do something.
Hey, who do you mean they?
The New Republic.
I was there. I wrote the editorial.
Yeah, well, I wasn't involved. I didn't pick the cover article.
I co-wrote the editorial.
Not with me, dude. Who was the editor? That must have been an Andrew thing. Mike wouldn't have done that, would he? No, Marty might have inflicted it on Mike. Who did that? Who's the editor?
I think it was, the whole editorial was designed to put welfare reform in the tradition of Marty caring about what happened to the black family.
Mm-hmm.
So Marty, I'm sure, was consulted. I forget. I think it was when David Greenberg and Peter Bynum were co-editing it or something.
Wait, David Greenberg was never co-editing though. Greenberg
definitely edited the piece.
Oh, well, that's possible. There are many editors at a magazine, but he was never.
I don't know whether he was acting as editor-in-chief when he did it.
He was not, I can assure you. He was never editor-in-chief.
And okay, well, anyway.
Strictly speaking, there was only one editor-in-chief in the entire. Marty's title was editor-in-chief. People forget this.
He wasn't the Mike Kinsley figure.
No.
Anyway, no. The ad would probably be like the Romney ad, which I went back and looked. Basically what happened in 2012 is Obama's liberal people inside the HHS bureaucracy said, we're allowing states to get waivers to the work requirements to give cash to mothers who are just so fucked up that we can't expect them to work. So we just give them cash. Fuck it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's giving cash to people without a work requirement. But no state had taken up this offer. And in fact, none did. But this was enough for Romney to say Obama's plan to get rid of the work requirement. But that wasn't deceptive. There was a plan by David Greenberg and the people at deep within the bowels of HHS to get rid of the work requirement. David Greenberg
or somebody else or David Greenberg?
When I say David Greenberg, I meant Mark Greenberg.
Mark Greenberg. Okay.
Anyway, Obama said this wasn't true. And they could basically say, no checks have gone out. No state has taken us up on this. We haven't gotten rid of the work requirement. And that was true, too. So they effectively countered it. But here, the checks have already gone out. They've gone out all over the country. And clearly, Biden wants to continue them. So it seems to me the ad would have more traction.
Yeah, I have a technical question about this whole bargaining. Oh, go ahead. What were you going to say?
And McCarthy has already talked about it. So, when McCarthy goes on, the GOP leader in the House goes on his stream of consciousness raps about what are the things to complain about? He complains about, the $600. If you have $600 in your bank account, the IRS can snoop. He complains about illegal immigration, and he complains about the work requirement for the child tax credit. So the Republicans are not onto this, and the polls obviously are steering them in this direction.
My technical question before we move on to something else, should we decide to?
No, I think this is good for another hour.
You think for the rest of the day we can talk infrastructure? Yeah, works for me. So it's just like when the Democrats say they're choosing between, dropping some of these big ticket items altogether or just funding them for less time. I mean, doesn't Manchin just say, no, wait, that's cheating? Because if you just say instead of 3.5 trillion over 10 years, it's half that over 5, it's the same annual expenditure. And Manchin's whole point is to reduce annual expenditure, right? Am I misunderstanding what is being proposed by them here?
If Manchin is sincere, yes. But we don't know if Manchin is sincere or if he can be bought off by some cheap optics. Nobody's ever said, Joe Manchin is a man of principle. He will never sell out in a negotiation. And they don't say that. They say Manchin can be bought. So the question is what he can be bought by. The second thing is it's possible that Manchin doesn't just care about expenditures this year, but he cares about the overall decline into debt and the overall sort of propagation of entitlements that are going to bankrupt us. And if you shorten the time frame, in 4 years, there's a chance to kill it. So it is an actual concession. It gives Republicans a chance to kill these entitlements. And, it makes a big difference. And David Dayen of the American Prospect made this point clearly. Liberals don't like it. Smart liberals don't like it because, as opposed to the Progressive Caucus, because it's much easier to eliminate something that if you do nothing, it's going to go away, than it is to get rid of something. If you do nothing, it's going to stay there. It's just our system is built for inertia. Now, that's not true for the child tax credit. That is true for the child tax credit, too. If it's slated to go away, it's easier to get rid of it. So that Manchin could say, well, they're not necessarily 10-year bankrupting expenditures. We're going to be able to get rid of some of them, so it's better than nothing.
Okay.
I don't know. That's why it's not complete cosmetics, but it's mainly cosmetics.
Now about that Dave Chappelle. So he has this a couple, gets two shows. Two episodes of a show on Netflix so far, and in one of them he went into trans stuff in a way that led people to want to cancel him. And there's going to be has been some Netflix employee walk out or something.
He only has one, as far as I know.
I think there's maybe two shows, but one was on trans, but I'm not sure, or part of it was about that.
This is his new show, and he has a bunch of old shows that defended trans people too, I think.
Okay.
They're all on Netflix. He's a Netflix regular.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons they're standing behind him, because he's done a series of high-rated shows with them. But it's a very recent thing that's got everybody all upset. Just dropped, as the kids say. Just dropped.
Did they say that?
And there was a really ridiculous article in the New York Times saying, this has damaged Netflix. Netflix used to be big, but now they're damaged, and there's no evidence they've been damaged. The controversy may even help them. And it was just obviously some editor at the New York Times saying, he has offended the LGBTQ community. Get an article to how this has damaged Netflix. I want that article tomorrow. And some guy dutifully wrote it. It has no evidence that this has happened. And what's more, it misses what seems to me the key way Chappelle offended people, which is he has a couple of anti-Semitic cracks. He clearly doesn't like Jews. Okay, I heard trans people he tolerates. He has a sort of visceral sort of reaction against them, but some of his best friends are trans people. That's the point of the whole routine.
Well, he apparently ends on that note with a touching anecdote about a trans comedian.
It's a little pad, but yeah.
Well, she actually died, and now he's giving money to her daughter or something.
Yeah, he talks about his interaction with the trans comedian who started off hostile, and he became to be her best friend, and then a week later she jumped off a building. So it's moving and sad and tear jerky in a way that's a little too convenient for him. But he doesn't hate trans people. Jews, on the other hand, he has this theory.
What's the worst thing he says about Jews?
Well, he says he has this idea for a movie. Wait, I'm preparing to not laugh at this. You're going to laugh at this, Bob.
No, I'm not going to laugh.
You're going to laugh.
No, because if I laugh, I'll get canceled. I'm not going to laugh.
You're going to laugh at this, and you're going to be canceled.
Okay, go ahead.
This is. He has an idea for a movie, in which
God damn it! Now I'm going to laugh regardless because I'm thinking, don't laugh. This is like when you're in church. When we were in church, and we would go when we were in church when I was a kid. It's like one of my siblings would just start laughing, and precisely because you're not supposed to laugh in church, it would be contagious. You would feel their shoulders shaking, and you start laughing. This is like this. If I laugh, folks, it's not because I think this joke is funny. Okay, let's hear it.
It involves a race of people who are very, very advanced, and they leave Earth and colonize outer space, and they have a bad time on this new planet that they are. So they come back and they want to reclaim the Earth as theirs. And he says, and I have a title for this: Space Jews.
It's not fun.
Yeah,
it's not fun.
Very impressive self-control there, Bob.
Thank you.
And I guess this is an analogy to Israel.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's not obvious enough what the joke is. Is that the joke?
Wait. He later refers to something where he says, which doesn't involve reclaiming land. And he says, and the name for that is Space Jews. And he just
that's kind of funny because then he's kind of making fun of himself, isn't he?
Yes. No, that was funnier, but it was less anti-Semitic because he was making fun of himself, but it was more anti-Semitic because he was applying this Space Jews analogy in a context that didn't involve Israel and just involved Jews being aggressive assholes. Anyway, this, as you know, this wouldn't bother me because I thought it was funny and Jews can take it. And
what's his name? Who's the famous Jewish comedian who died about a few months ago?
Mason.
Yeah. He had the shtick of his they played when he died was about Jews being hard to satisfy, but it was about food. And I actually did not think it was funny, but that was his shtick.
No, Jackie Mason couldn't really object to this because he put it all out in the open. It's
his shtick, yeah.
But I
heard Chappelle targeted all kinds of groups, didn't he? Multiple
not
groups,
really,
even
but
blacks.
This is the only one that really was complete. He made no attempt to tone it down. The other ones, he said, "I'm a feminist, but I have problems with this." I was wrong to say this about trans people, but their pussy isn't like the other people's pussy, which is the high point of the routine, by the way.
Yeah, I'm rolling in the aisles. That was wonderful. Say that again. No, don't.
I'm summarizing it. The key to Chappelle, his delivery is amazing. His facial expressions are amazingly subtle and good and add to the comedy and human. But anyway, so the high point is he says, he tries to make his peace with trans people, but this is one thing he can't get over, and that's out in the open. So that's his critique of trans people. You can't say, his critique would be, you can't really say that you're just like other women. Don't try to pretend you're just like other women. I guess that would be the unfunny way to put it. But he tries to make amends to all these groups, to women, to trans people. He does not try to make amends to the Jews. And the New York Times totally missed this angle. The New York Times, the most Jewish community in America, and it doesn't even notice this incredible offense that would ordinarily it would go berserk about. This is so much worse than Jesse Jackson saying "High Me Town."
Oh no, it's not. It's a joke.
New York is High Me Town. Give me a break.
Yeah, but Jesse Jackson was kind of caught off mic referring to a friend or something, right?
No, it was worse than that. It was worse than that. He had an off-the-record agreement with the reporter, and the reporter decided to break it.
like, how dumb can you be? I mean, to use the term anyway, right? I mean, you're off the record with a reporter, fine, but you still don't give them hostages, right? Anyway.
It was dumb.
Speaking of which, hey, how about that RBG? She called.
Well, are we through with Dave Chappelle?
No, but I just want to tell you, folks, we got this ahead. We don't leave now. We got Ruth Bader Ginsburg coming on stage.
Well,
sorry. Go ahead.
Well, we'll get to her. But anyway, well, we can talk about it now. What was so offensive about what Ruth Bader Ginsburg said?
Well,
I think I know.
There's two dimensions. I have two questions. Like, so she said to Katie Couric, apparently in an interview, what Colin Kaepernick did is dumb. Blah, blah, blah. I have two questions. Like, A, what is a Supreme Court justice doing spouting off about American politics? I just think that's a bad idea.
Well, look, that part was in the interview. There was a story that she said that the fact that she said what Kaepernick said was dumb, that was in the news. Couric didn't suppress that.
Oh, she didn't?
No, she suppressed a couple of her quotes, which seemed to imply that she thought that the protesters should realize that this is a country that gave their ancestors, that their ancestors came here and they found freedom. Well, but that is definitely not true of the blacks who are the majority of blacks.
No, but I think she meant at least
we're incredibly historically wrong. I think that's what
I thought she meant, well, at least you're no longer in chains like your ancestors. Why don't you be like super grateful that we're not, treating you as property or something, which would also be kind of bad.
It implied that they were immigrants like everybody else, which seemed weird. And that's why it was cut, I think.
I see.
We know that she thought Kaepernick was stupid and unpatriotic. That was in the interview.
Well, I mean, this is maybe a hobby horse of mine, but look, I am as cynical as the next person about the actual motivation of Supreme Court justices. They have ideologies. They tend to be political or they wouldn't be on the Supreme Court. But I actually think it's in the interest of the country for them to try to preserve a kind of mystique surrounding the court. As cynical as that may sound, I do not think Supreme Court justices should be going around spouting off about politics. I think they should shut the fuck up.
Since I think Milley should have been fired from the Joint Chiefs of Staff for calling Trump supporters stormtroopers, I agree with you. But I think the occasional stripping away of the veil so we see that they are actually human beings and what kind of human beings they are is very useful in terms of letting us know exactly what goes into a Supreme Court decision.
But we know that. I mean,
no, we wouldn't. There was a Bob Woodward book that was very good about this, and we don't know. This was implied that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the god, who is supposed to be the most the sophisticated liberal, hangs out with Leon Wieseltier, is on everybody's list of the great Americas, actually had some crude, sort of retrograde, sort of dumb opinions. It's like Trump saying they're not sending their best. It was a dumbness.
I just think, look, they give speeches insisting that there are no Democratic judges, there are no Republican judges. Again, that's not true, but I understand why they want us to believe that. Well, if they want us to believe that, they should really not go around sharing their political views with us.
She thought it was okay to say that there are all judges who believe in standing for the national anthem and saluting the flag, but no.
Well, I suppose you could defend her on those grounds that it was she was playing against type and trying to dispel the idea that she's a liberal justice in a predictable way. Maybe that's a good defense. So I'll have to jump to the thing that there's no defense for, which is why did she not resign? But we've already been over that.
Anyway, back to Chappelle.
Yeah,
I think the protest against him is, despite the New York Times trying to whip it up, is fizzling. The CEO, they have co-CEOs, and the one, Sarandos, I guess is his name, was terrible. He said, but this had great stickiness and it made us lots of money, so we're not going to censor this.
Yeah, that's not the quote.
He sounded like an idiot.
That's not the quote you want.
And Reed Hastings, bizarrely, who is a liberal, a hardcore liberal, he's the guy who tried to get Peter Thiel fired from the Facebook board just because Thiel supported Trump. Mm-hmm. So he's like not a subtle, nuanced guy.
He's a god among men. Actually, he read one of my books. He's a god among men.
Okay, and the second good thing about him is that he had a very good defense that we believe in free expression. And Chappelle has his right to free expression.
That's a better way to put it. That's a better way to put it than sticky. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also clear that Chappelle's thing is good in the sense that it ventilates the issue. And if you hate him, you can now have something to argue against. It's, you now know what people who don't like trans people think. And you know that there are some people there who just sort of don't like Jews and think they're aggressive assholes. I think it's good that people know that.
That wasn't the joke. The joke was that they're malcontents, right? Or what? Or I still don't get the joke.
Malcontents, the space Jews thing?
Yeah.
They're coming back and taking their land. No, they're. It also dovetails with reclaiming art from Nazis. It's like there's a whole theory that the reclaiming of art stolen from Nazis has sort of become an industry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like here we are in Germany watching looking at our nice paintings in the museums, and the Jews come back and they demand money. Isn't that like what the Jews always do? I mean, there is a critique of the people who do this, which I heard from the mouth of a person who does it, who nevertheless defended himself, but he says he gets a lot of shit for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so Chappelle could have been echoing that critique too. They're coming back and reclaiming this land, this art that they lost 50 years ago, 80 years ago, whatever.
Yeah. So quickly, Steve Bannon, they're threatening to. Would they actually jail him? The whatever investigative committee in the House, the Jan 6 committee is holding him in contempt.
I don't understand this. All these subpoena fights, I ignore them all because they all come to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I just ignore this. Plus, why is the committee? I want this committee to exist. I want it to find out the truth. But you ain't going to find out the truth by calling Steve Bannon. The only way to call Steve Bannon is because you want to nail him for perjury. Okay, that's. I think you find out the truth by getting all the emails, getting all the evidence. Let's get all that.
Well, that's what they want. That's what they want.
Resisting that.
Yeah. No, he won't turn over documents.
Oh, okay. But if it's just you want him to come and testify himself, that's not going to add to your knowledge.
He may be refusing to do that, but he's definitely, I think, refusing to turn over documents.
Oh, well, maybe they'll eventually intimidate him to turning over documents. But can't they get the emails from their friends at Facebook or something like that? I mean,
I don't even know what documents they are. I mean, he did play a very important role. I was following it at the time. He was a big amplifier going into that. Big time. He was almost the clearinghouse for like the movement. I really believe that.
It was Stop the Steal.
Well, yeah, and the January 6th leading up to it. It's like
Stop the Steal is what led the January 6th.
But I mean, the specific event. I was listening to him night after night. I mean, as I've told you, the night before January 6th, I was listening to his podcast and I said, they better have, to myself, I thought they better have a battalion there. I was literally imagining the security perimeter they were going to need to establish.
It was like
to
the
keep
defense
people
of
out
the
of the
Pentagon.
Capitol.
Like the defense of the Pentagon in the 60s.
Yeah, it's like it was just obvious. That's why I continue to be baffled that they're like, well, we didn't have good intelligence. Hey, do you have a fucking podcast app? I mean, geez. Anyway,
it's very weird that crowd control comes down to numbers. It's do you have more cops?
Sheer number of bodies?
Yeah.
But also tactics. I mean, you
think it would come down to like how strong your offenses were, but no, it comes down to numbers.
Well, they did have the issue that they didn't want to appear, to whatever the term is. They didn't want to build a moat,
So they're sort of, they might step on their message here because if the purpose is to get Trump, and it turns out that Bannon was the driving force and Trump wasn't, that sort of gets Trump off the hook. I mean, if you read Michael Wolff's book, I think we talked about this. Trump wasn't concerned about the rally. He was concerned about getting Pence to do the Eastman thing, to getting Pence to, and his whole focus was putting pressure on Pence. And maybe the rally was part of that, but it wasn't the main part of that. And he wasn't thinking about what was happening at the rally. So he wasn't.
But wait, his tweet about Pence as they stormed the Capitol suggests that he saw synergy between these two issues.
Correct. At that point. He belatedly saw synergy, but he talked
about Pence he mentioned Pence at the rally.
Right. No, but that's because his thing was about Pence. But he didn't say, and he said he didn't say go hang him if he doesn't vote for it.
That tweet came pretty close.
Anyway. That's but maybe they have other evidence that will implicate Trump, but it might be that all the evidence implicates Bannon, which is not what they want to do. Do they think they're going to turn Bannon? They're not going to turn Bannon.
Turn him? What would he testify? I don't think he's got.
I coordinated this all with Trump and the Proud Boys, and we all agreed we were going to go and kill people. That would be the worst case.
I don't know. I'm not even sure I suspect that. I
don't know. It's outlandish, but
yeah.
But you said that if you want to know what they want to show some signs of Trump coordinating with the people who were violent, and so far there are none. They also just want to. They just they would like to make Bannon some kind of victim. I mean, it's crazy because it's like there's no bigger favor they could do for him than to put him in jail. I mean, make his day. Tell it to Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, that was a slightly different case.
By the way, Michael Wolff has some good Jeffrey Epstein stuff, which I didn't realize.
Oh, so we can talk about that in the Parrot Room,
including a theory of Trump, which is Epstein's theory of Trump, which is I'd never heard before and might make sense.
Well, I
too bad he's not alive to expound on it.
Wait, theory of Trump or theory of Epstein?
Theory of Trump.
Trump is alive, Mickey.
But Epstein is not.
Oh, Epstein's theory of Trump?
Yes.
Oh, Michael Wolff tells us Epstein's theory of Trump?
Epstein had a theory of Trump.
Well, this has got Parrot Room written all over it.
Which he told to Ehud Barak.
We will talk about this in the Parrot Room. This is, I'm just going to be crassly commercial and manipulative. That's fucking bonus content, man.
I'm not going to refer to Ehud Barak as one of the people that Dave Chappelle was talking about.
Wait, where did he come from? Oh, he had an Epstein thing, we think. Yeah, we think.
Epstein told his theory to Ehud Barak. Yeah.
Epstein told his theory of Trump to Ehud Barak?
Yeah, Ehud Barak and Epstein are like that. You know that.
Yeah, like that.
They're in business together. Barak stays at an apartment that Epstein's brother owns, where he stashes his models. Epstein was a frequent guest at the townhouse. You know all that.
I actually didn't, but I'll take your word for it.
And was that because Barak was Epstein's control? No, that couldn't be.
Yeah, let's leave that. That's Dave Chappelle territory, man. I'm
also surprised that the ADL hasn't gone more berserk about Chappelle. They must realize that would only help him and cause. I mean, if they finally realize that calling attention to an anti-Semitic crack actually is worse for the Jews than not calling attention to it and ignoring it when everybody else is ignoring it.
Also, not to be too cynical about the ADL, but they tend to focus on, let's just say they spend some time on statements that are critical of Israel or they think are bad for Israel that they can depict as anti-Semitic. I mean,
well, that's what this is.
No, it's not. It's not like it's not. It's
he didn't
not
say the word Israel, but he talks about people leaving a land and coming back and claiming it. That could be right.
but I mean, think concrete things like Ilhan Omar saying the reason American politicians support Israel, it's all about the Benjamins. That kind of thing, where she's actually, she's arguing
where she's actually honing in on the truth.
I will leave that to you I mean, it's partly about the Benjamins. I mean, it's
partly about the Benjamins. It's certainly not entirely about the Benjamins.
Well, even if you're just talking about AIPAC, it's not only about the Benjamins. They have subtler dimensions in that, but I recently heard an anecdote where somebody tried to tell a group of Jewish donors that they shouldn't worry about anti-Semitism among the Trump deplorables. There is some anti-Semitism there. It's deplorable. But these are the people you have to reach. You want to reach the American working class, you're going to get some anti-Semitism in the bargain. And the donors absolutely did not understand this point. Anti-Semitism is anti-Semitism to them. I can see why they wouldn't. I mean, it's like, if you say to any group, look, you're going to have to accept a little persecution. That's life. I mean, they're probably going to resist that.
It's not persecution. It's bigotry.
Well, that too.
I mean, you, and you have to cut the working class some slack, just the way you would presumably cut rich people some slack for their bigotry, and figure that in the long run, if we all get together and talk to each other, the bigotry is going to disappear. That would be the goal.
Yeah. Well, I certainly think Trump. I mean, I think there were two kinds of concerns about Trump among different people going in. One was that he would foment anti-Semitism. The other was that he would sell out Israel, or not do what a good pro-Israel president would do. The second part turned out to certainly be wrong. And I don't know. I don't remember. Oh, let's see. There were a few accusations that I thought were a little shaky. Like he tweeted a sheriff's badge that had 6 points. Or something.
And then it was an ad that had.
And it was a retweet.
A bunch of Goldman Sachs people who were Jewish in it or something.
I don't know. But anyway, so wait, so you promised, or is this Parrot Room material? You promised you were going to try to get me upset. You promised on Twitter.
Let's do that.
Okay. No, so this takes us to my newsletter, the Nonzero newsletter.
Yes. Let's enter the anger dome.
Good luck.
And see if we can get Bob upset.
I'm happy as a clam. You're not going to change that. You're going to try to get me to lose my cool. Hard to imagine. There are other Bobs, and you may be getting me mixed up with one of them.
So you wrote this long blog post where you try to define the blob,
kind of,
against all the blobsters who, in Sarah Lyle's piece in the New York Times, had said, "Oh, the definition is incoherent." Yeah. So there really is no definition.
There's no such thing as the blob. No coherent notion that corresponds to the foreign policy blob.
I would be able to talk about it.
The blob being the view that the people the loosely ideologically connected people who prevail within the foreign policy establishment and have, in the view of people like me, totally screwed up American foreign policy for decades now. Yes.
Right.
The blob.
And I loved your piece because it's very clearly written and funny. And it seems to meander, but it meanders in a very purposeful way that takes you where you want to go.
That's the Substack way, man.
It was a haiku compared to the average Substack post.
It was the longest newsletter piece I've ever written, I think.
So anyway, you go, but the best section is the section where you say what the blob is not.
Right.
Then you get to what the blob is, and the gruel gets a little thin.
Careful. I feel my equanimity slipping.
You say, exactly. You say, I'm already sense I have some traction. You say that they exaggerate the threats, mm-hmm. that they're Manichaean, mm-hmm. they have an us versus them, good guys versus bad guys view of the world. That would
be Manichaean, yes.
They have... they believe in American exceptionalism, their own exceptionalism. They're the good guys. They believe in meddling
in the internal affairs of other countries. Yes.
Number 5 is they think they can get away with it in the world.
Wait, no, that's not quite what it is. What is number 5? I'll call the piece up.
They think that the number 5 is very short, and that's the point. Number 6 is they're hypocrites. Okay. If we leave out number 5, basically you're saying they're assholes, and it could apply to people's view of Trumpists. They exaggerate the threat. They think the Trumpists are bad people. They have a Manichaean worldview. They're hypocrites. They believe in, the FBI people go to jail for lying, breaking the rules in order to mm-hmm. get the Trumpists. Mm-hmm. So you're just saying that they're assholes, but that could be anybody. That could be, and the key is number 5. They think they can get away with all the meddling.
It's not get away with. Number 5 is naive do-goodism, and I say right, this: okay. the meddling, in the internal affairs of other nations is driven not only by a conviction that we know what's best for everyone, but that we have the skill to bring it into being.
Right.
Even though the last few decades of history strongly suggest we don't. And I've given examples in the piece of the various ways we try to intervene, not even all of them military, but
the key is this naive do-gooder is exactly that, because the distinguishing characteristic of the blob, which you don't even mention in the piece, which is clear, is that they don't really have a Manichaean view. They think that everybody is the same, everybody is democracy loving, everybody is freedom loving. So if we go and meddle, we're going to unleash this wonderful human nature that everybody has, and democracy is going to wind up ruling the world. They have a universalistic, positive view of humanity, not as the bad guys, but as too good. And their whole theory works is because they have this crazy George Bush idea that once we have people want democracy, and once we have democracy, we won't have any more wars. And that is the essence of blobdom, it seems to me. And you left it out.
Well, you're saying that universalism, the idea that kind of people everywhere are the same, is a blob characteristic I should have added.
Yeah, the Iraqis are going to welcome us with flowers and embrace democracy, and we only have to have 100,000 troops there because, hey, they're Democrats and it'll be fine, and we can set up democracy, stand up a democracy in Iraq, stand up a democracy in Afghanistan, piece of cake. Everybody wants democracy. They're all just like us. That's the essence.
I could have. I mean, in the Ezra Klein interview, when I was describing the foreign policy establishment, I did say there's an assumption that people everywhere share our aspirations, but I don't think I'm as skeptical as universalism in a certain sense as you are. I mean, it's like people in rural Afghanistan do not want what people who have shows on MSNBC want. That I believe, but I don't believe that is some deeply embedded fact. And in fact, you see that Afghans who have moved to the city are quite different from Afghans who live in rural areas. So I don't think I'm quite as anti-universalistic as you are.
Well, this is you've anticipated the next point I was going to make, which is the reason that you're more willing than other people to sort of let China run its course, not meddle in their affairs, not assume that they're not force them into democracy, because you are still confident that the arrow of history points in a good direction. The arrow of history, as you outlined in your book, Nonzero, points to an end point which is pretty democratic and favorable. So we can let them run their course, and this implies that you do have a universalistic aspect, which is that everybody in the end is going to be sort of democratic, and that's the only way it's going to work. And so you are just like the blob because you both have universalistic views.
I don't think that belief is required in order to argue that we shouldn't be doing a lot of meddling. I mean, that question aside, which I can get to, we cannot save Hong Kong. I'm not aware of a way that we can bring democracy to Hong Kong. Okay, at what you might call an acceptable cost, in the sense that it doesn't pose all kinds of other risks and do all kinds of other damage that involve the welfare of actual human beings ultimately, and and so on. So,
but ultimately, you think democracy will come to Hong Kong centuries and centuries from now?
Well, look,
centuries. The arrow of history that you outline in Nonzero points to democracy, and Hong Kong being part of the world is going to be democratic.
The thing I said in Nonzero that is commonly thought to have been now demonstrably disproved, which I'm not quite ready to give up on, is that in the long run, perhaps especially in a modern technological environment, and this part, I think I put too much hope in the properties of the modern digital technological environment. But anyway, the argument was that the government has to some extent choose between prosperity and liberty, not in the sense of becoming a liberal democracy, but just in the sense that there are trade-offs where there's a cost to being too repressive in economic terms. It's going to cut into your prosperity. I still think that's probably true. Whether that will ultimately lead China to become more politically liberal in the long run, I think the jury is still out. I mean, I was there in 2010. Things were going pretty well. Chinese people were telling me, oh, the dialogue is so much more open than it used to be. There's only like a couple of things you're not supposed to say, and that's way better than it used to be. Now, then she shows up, things change. We don't know how much of that is due to him or other things, but it's not that long a period of time.
Well, also the fact that he feels he has to crack down shows that there is a tension there.
Precisely. I think that's true. I also think that more than we realize, we have played into his hands. You know, all the lecturing we do of China sometimes strengthens the nationalist sentiment that he thrives on. But anyway, I think I do believe people everywhere are at some fundamental level pretty much the same. But there are significant cultural differences, and we do have to respect those. They're just because they're cultural. That means to me they may not be eternally manifest, but they're there and they're real.
That's an alarmingly good synthesis. So we'll pass that over and say, if the jury is out on whether China becomes democratic, the jury is out on whether Nonzero is right or not, right?
Yeah. Although, I don't know if I said someday there'll be a liberal democracy. I was talking about but yeah, it was optimistic along that dimension, and the jury is out on that. I mean, that's my best case scenario, because most people think the jury's in and people like me lost. So yeah, the jury's out. I insist on that. The jury being out.
This dovetails in with a dilemma that I have too, which is I think I sort of know what people will do, and sometimes it's not what those people themselves think they want to do, but I think I sort of know their human nature and that they will eventually see my light. It's very similar to Barack Obama saying, if we give them good jobs, they'll stop clinging to their guns and their God.
Bitterly clinging.
What?
Bitterly clinging, he said.
Bitterly, right? Okay. I think if we were just talking about it, I think if you give people good jobs and have a dialogue, there'll be fewer, and everybody mingles with each other, there'll be less racism. They may not think that. Am I an asshole for trying to impose, am I a snob like Obama, thinking, well, if you do what I say, the object of my policy will change. I thought that with welfare. I thought if you people go to work, there'll be a better culture. Maybe they didn't think that. Am I just as condescending as anybody who predicts that China will do this and China will do that? Are we condescending to the Chinese to say, no, we're not going to do that? I don't know.
Wait, are we condescending to the Chinese if we say what?
The Chinese say, we're going to keep our one-party state and we don't need your democracy. We have a new fourth, history isn't ended. We have a new form of combining a mode of production and government that's better than yours. It may be more authoritarian, but so what? And it will win. Yeah. And we're saying, no, we know it won't, because you need freedom.
One thing I will say, in a way it's condescending, but one thing I will say is China has done a better job than is appreciated, I think, of, on the one hand, not having a democracy, and yet getting actual feedback from people about how they're happy they are with governance and adjusting to that. I mentioned I had lunch with this Princeton political scientist. He mentioned another Princeton political scientist who's a China expert who wrote a book called Making Autocracy Work, I think is the name of it. And apparently that's his very argument, that they're better than you would think at meeting the actual needs of the people. And in a way, that's a long historical tendency of China. For very long periods of time, they kept very large expanses of land under unified government and had ways, even though it wasn't a democracy, of getting feedback from the hinterland. I'm thinking maybe I should find this guy and have him on my podcast. Would that be interesting? It would, wouldn't it?
Sure. The John Lanchester piece that my friend John Ellis promotes, that I keep talking about in the London Review of Books, said he was reviewing a book where he said they're very good at letting local disputes fester. So they let people speak their mind about their local officials, and they're very sophisticated about what threatens them at the top. But they let local sort of semi-democracy, or at least people have a voice. They sort of let that flourish. They don't suppress everything.
But I don't think it's just festering. I think sometimes they are responsive to that feedback.
Festering was the wrong word.
And that's an example where the technology is playing a role. I mean, people, they organize with cell phones and stuff, and they have protests, and there's more of that than people realize. And they complain about polluted lakes and stuff, and they get results. I think there's more of that going on than people realize.
I still keep thinking of Garrett Epps, a person who's blocked me on Twitter, nevertheless wrote a good novel where he pointed out that in Richmond, I think I've referred to this before, in Richmond, Virginia, they were about to make slavery work in the factory. They built a factory, it's still there, where they were having slaves do industrial work, which is supposedly what slavery could not transition to. And yet they were making it work, and they were going to make a whole bunch of money and be very productive without any freedom at all. So,
well, that's the way the system had worked, right? I mean, the farms were productive without any freedom at all.
Right, but the theory was that slavery could never transition to industrialism. I see. And Garrett points out, well, it was transiting to industrialism right here in the heart of Richmond. And it was only because the North won the Civil War that they squelched this experiment. And there's the other example is the Germans sort of half-made communism work. People were still buying Zeiss lenses, even though they were made in East Germany.
Zeiss lenses were made in East Germany?
I think so.
Huh. Who knew? You know, my smartphone. Oh, this is like maybe a grand unified theory of. No, my smartphone has a Leica and it's a Huawei, I was going to say.
Maybe it was Leicas that I'm thinking of. There was some photographic equipment that was still made.
Could have been Zeiss. I'm not even sure Leica is Germany, is it? Maybe. So Mickey,
Leica is destined to mainly be famous for Mary McCarthy's view of "I Am a Camera."
I'm not sure I'm getting that reference, but
Mary McCarthy reviewed "I Am a Camera," a play based on the book of short stories, I guess, and her review was "No Leica."
Oh, now the play wasn't written by her great rival, was it? What was the great rivalry? The two people who hated each other. Mary.
It was written by Christopher Isherwood.
Okay.
Her great rival was Mary McCarthy.
No, wait, she was Mary McCarthy.
No, she was Mary McCarthy. Her great rival was Wright. Because
I know whenever anybody walked up to her and said, "Is your great rival Mary McCarthy?" she would say, "I'll have you know, I am Mary McCarthy."
So I've made that mistake in worse situations than this.
You know nothing of my work. I am me. So Mickey, we've been talking for an hour and 9 minutes.
It was the woman who did. The woman who said every word she utters is a lie, including N and V.
Yeah, including Lillian Hellman.
I'm glad I forgot her.
Did I get it right? Lillian Hellman.
Everybody will forget her.
Lillian Hellman.
Yeah, it was Lillian Hellman.
Thank you.
Also, a woman who, when Hitler invaded Russia, she burst from a meeting and said, "A motherland has been attacked."
Wait, say that again. Which one said that? Lillian Hellman or Mary McCarthy? And she said it when?
During the war, when the motherland was attacked by Hitler.
Oh.
When he broke the agreement. There's a very good book called The Hollywood Writers' Wars that's designed to convince you that the Hollywood writers who were victimized in the McCarthy period weren't communists, that basically succeeds in convincing you that they were communists because it's a good book.
I will take that under advisement. So Mickey, we should, it's an hour and 10 minutes. People are in a hurry to get to this amazing 5 seconds that's going to be at the end of this. And yet there are things we failed to get to, and we should mention them so we can speak about them in the Parrot Room. Okay. We'll talk about supply chains.
What could be more exciting than that?
That'll bring them in. Supply chains.
Jeffrey Epstein's
Michael Wolff's account of Jeffrey Epstein's theory of Trump, or is it the other way? Yeah. No? Yeah. That's it, right? Ignore
a
that.
A friend of mine who's a listener to the show
Is calling?
Calling.
Let's have him or her on, Mickey.
No, I don't think so. But okay. I hope
Parrot Room. She should. So I want to
made it onto the air.
So let's see. We could maybe mention this issue of Walgreens closing stores because of systematic shoplifting. Nick Kristof running. Well, you can veto these. Just let me know. Do we not want to talk about Nick Kristof? Apparently inspired by your not altogether successful run for the Senate, is thinking about leaving journalism to run for governor of Oregon.
Well, I know his goal is, he tells people he wants to beat cows. That's his goal. He doesn't really want to win.
So he wants to come in 19th or higher?
Cows. Wants to come in what?
19th or higher. It was a joke. It was not good.
Came in third, Bob.
More evidence of Ben Rhodes' ironic blobishness. Ironic, since he coined the term blob. What else?
I had some things maybe to say about David Shor.
Popularism.
Could talk about, is Terry McAuliffe going to win in Virginia? You talk about them finally killing the Iowa primary caucuses, we hope.
No, you write it. You're right. You have this list, right?
I have them written down.
Okay.
We can talk about Daniel Craig saying he just sort of happens to like to go to gay bars for the decor and because
to avoid fistfights. To avoid fistfights.
The machismo of hetero culture. Yes.
Right. Well, I figured you'd be suspicious of that claim.
I'm a little suspicious. A little suspicious of that one. The flaw in my. I was obviously completely ignorant when I talked about how the important thing in stopping the potential Trump coup was to get hold of the state legislatures, because there is a provision in the Constitution that seems to give the power to the state legislatures. So,
state legislators, Trump.
Perhaps that's a roadblock to this theory. There's a new documentary about my favorite band, the Velvet Underground, which is supposed to be terrific.
Velvet Underground.
What?
I said Velvet Underground.
I thought you said delete.
No.
You were deleting my topic.
No.
Okay.
Now I want to. I taped a thing with Steve Pinker that's going to air next week. I want to talk about that a little. I want to, maybe if we have time, raise the question of, I don't see why he's quite so demonized by the left. A little bit, I see it, but not as much as it is.
Why is he demonized by the left and not you, Bob? Oh, don't you
that's an excellent way to put it, actually. Yeah. Why him and not me? Because we agreed on some things. They're in the podcast. That's a good way to put it.
You actually disagree on the things
with Steve? Yeah. I think, I don't know. Maybe should we say this because we have so much stuff? But so last week, so you had a good joke about genitalia 2 weeks ago. I tried to counter with a joke about genitalia last week in the Parrot Room. This is all in the Parrot Room. By comment or consensus, I failed. You're still ahead. I do have another genitalia joke. I don't know. Do we have so much wonderful content that I should save it or what?
No, you should do it, and we can compare it with. I'll think of a joke from the Dave Chappelle show, which is nonstop jokes about genitalia. So
okay. So we'll have a genitalia joke face off.
It's hard to believe you're going to win this one, Bob, but
I doubt it. But
I didn't think you'd keep your cool.
Yeah, you were wrong about that.
And well, you can judge. You were starting to get a little animated there, but yeah.
There are things. A couple of things in today's Nonzero newsletter, which I hope to now go get out if we quit recording in between now in the Parrot Room. I'm going to click send on that. But U.S. threatens military action against Iran. And then the Facebook thought police. There's a whole new dimension to that The Intercept wrote about.
We
may not have time.
They had a list of people who were dangerous people who were flagged. I only knew like 2 of them.
You did know 2 of them? I didn't read the whole list. There's like 4,000 items on it.
I scanned it for people I know, and I didn't find any.
But you did know 2 of them? You did know 2 of them?
No, I know one of them. I've met one.
Oh, it would be an alt-right figure, probably, right?
Well, there was a list of organizations, and then there was a list of individuals. Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about. Then we should talk about that.
Let's not talk about that.
No, we'll talk about
that. And I wanted to start a new feature
in the Parrot Room,
Help a Boomer Out, where I say I don't understand some word that's commonly used. Like I think the last time it was I didn't understand what the Brandon meme was. And
right. Our commenters answered that. We have the answer.
Answer that immediately. So I have a second one. I have another one this week.
Okay.
Because I'm a font of cluelessness.
I'm right up there with you, as you know. So other stuff too. We'll talk about other stuff too. Believe me, there's no place like the Parrot Room. And so now they get to see the amazing Parrot Room visual.
Can't wait. I'm on tenterhooks.
You'll be impressed. You're going to be impressed. You're going to be going like, whoa, I can't believe I mocked this.
Hang on. You'll be impressed.
Yeah, I'm not saying it rates up there with that, but it's good. It's good. Okay, we will see you in the Parrot Room.